The text on her phone read, "We're done. Get your stuff from the storage unit." Samantha Delaney stood in the dim hallway, the lock on her apartment door replaced, the flickering overhead light casting long shadows. Another message buzzed in, cold, casual. "I pawned your jewelry. It wasn't worth much anyway." She read it twice, her hands trembling, while she was sleeping on plastic chairs, eating vending machine snacks, helping her sister survive emergency surgery. Her husband ended their 15-year marriage by text and erased her from their home. A dusty storage unit, a pile of garbage bags, her life in fragments. But then, cut to a sleek studio, lights flashing, cameras rolling. Samantha, now poised in a blazer, sits across from a national news anchor. "Canvas has helped over 1 million people," the anchor says. "Tell us, how did it start?" Samantha's voice is clear. "It started with a lock and ended with a key, one I made myself." Samantha Delaney was the kind of teacher students remembered years after graduation. At 47, she taught high school art in Reno, Nevada, where her classroom was filled with color, music, and quiet encouragement. She had a way of noticing the kid who sat in the back row, of gently pulling creativity out of students who didn't think they had any. Her patience ran deep, matched only by her empathy. Students confided in her, colleagues respected her, and parents trusted her. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her calm presence did more to settle chaos than any shouted command ever could. Outside the classroom, Samantha was a devoted wife and a loyal sister. She married Kyle when she was 32. They'd met at a teachers' conference in Sacramento. He taught physical education, and she'd been presenting a session on integrating digital tools in visual art. Their connection had been instant. Kyle was outgoing, funny, and charming, the kind of man who remembered birthdays, Carmen cafeteria worker on campus. Samantha was quieter, more reserved, but she found comfort in Kyle's energy. Together, they dreamed of a simple life. Weekends at Lake Tahoe, quiet dinners after long work days. Maybe one day a cabin in the mountains where she could paint and he could hike. They'd been married for 15 years. The early years were solid, filled with shared lesson planning, cozy evenings, and lazy Sunday mornings reading side by side. They never had children, though they'd talked about it. There'd been one miscarriage early on, and after that, they stopped trying. Samantha buried herself in her students, in her artwork, and in caring for her only sister, Vanessa. Vanessa had always been fragile, battling autoimmune issues since her 20s, and Samantha, as the older sibling, naturally fell into the caregiver role. Kyle began changing 2 years before the split. He applied for an athletic director position at the school and didn't get it. The disappointment soured something in him. He started going to the gym more, staying out later, becoming obsessed with reclaiming his youth. He dismissed her suggestions to try therapy. "We're just in a funk," he said. "We'll figure it out." Samantha had hoped so. But then Vanessa's health took a turn. An emergency surgery left her hospitalized for over a week, and Samantha didn't hesitate. She packed a bag and spent 10 days by her sister's side, sleeping in hospital chairs and living on cafeteria sandwiches. She texted Kyle updates every day, Vanessa's progress, her fear, her exhaustion. He always responded with one-liners. Hang in there. Don't worry about me." At the time, she thought he was just giving her space. She didn't expect to return home to a locked apartment door, a text message ending their marriage, and a note about a storage unit that now contained what little he hadn't sold. He'd pawned her jewelry, her grandmother's antique locket, her wedding ring. He'd sold the Toyota she'd saved 5 years to buy. No warning, no conversation, just erasure. But Samantha wasn't the type to fall apart and disappear. She'd spent her entire life helping others find their voice. Now it was time to find her own. She might have walked away with nothing, but she still had her skills, her creativity, and the drive to rebuild something no one could take from her again. Her next canvas wouldn't be framed on a wall. It would be digital, interactive, and healing. And it would carry her name. In the months leading up to the collapse, Samantha had sensed something shifting. Kyle had become a stranger in their home, more preoccupied, less affectionate, and increasingly absent without explanation. He started spending long hours at the gym, even on weekends when they usually took morning walks or caught up on grading together. When she asked about the change, he brushed it off with a laugh. Chilled by his promise. She needed clear my head. Samantha had wanted to believe him. Everyone hit rough patches. She told herself it was temporary. But the little things added up. Kyle stopped talking about his day. He became oddly protective of his phone, jumping when she glanced over while it buzzed. When she brought up therapy, he waved her off. "We don't need a stranger to tell us how to talk to each other," he'd said. But the truth was, he wasn't talking at all. Finances grew murky. Samantha noticed strange charges on their joint card. She asked about them. "It was probably a mistake. I'll check," Kyle said. But he never did. There was also the incident at the university library, just a few weeks before Vanessa's emergency. Samantha had been picking up a book for her portfolio research when a woman approached her and asked, "Is Kyle still coaching at Ridge High?" Samantha smiled politely and said yes. The woman looked uncomfortable and left quickly. He claimed not to know her. "Probably someone from a parent committee," he said. But something in his tone didn't match the story. Then came the pre-approval letter. It arrived in the mail, addressed to Samantha, offering congratulations on her upcoming mortgage loan approval for a condo in Northwest Reno. The property was unfamiliar, and she hadn't applied for anything. She showed Kyle the letter. "That's weird," he said, folding it in half and tossing it in the trash. "Probably a mistake from the bank." He said it so casually, he almost believed it. Still, unease crept in. There were glances from colleagues in the teacher's lounge, quiet, curious stares that faded when she entered. At the time, she assumed it was paranoia. She convinced herself people weren't whispering. She convinced herself Kyle loved her, even if he was distant. They'd been together for 15 years. That had to count for something. So when Vanessa was rushed into emergency surgery, Samantha didn't think twice. Her sister had no one else. Their parents were gone, and Samantha couldn't let her face that hospital alone. She laughed, expecting Kyle to understand. She didn't just expect support, she expected loyalty. Instead, he used her absence as an opportunity. He removed her from their lease, pawned her jewelry, sold her car without her consent, and he ended their marriage with a text. But as Samantha would later reflect, Kyle had made a critical mistake. He thought he left her with nothing. But he forgot. Her creativity, her vision, her voice, those were never his to sell. Samantha stared at her phone in the dim hallway, the door to her former apartment now shut behind a lock she no longer had a key for. The silence around her felt like it was pressing into her bones. She could have broken down, could have called Kyle and screamed, could have begged for an explanation. But she didn't. She typed one message, "You'll regret this." Then, without another word, she blocked his number. It was the last time she allowed him access to her peace. She checked into a modest motel near the hospital and spent her days by Vanessa's bedside. Her sister was recovering slowly, and Samantha stayed strong for her. Even inside, she felt like she was unraveling. When the divorce papers arrived, they hit like a punch. Kyle had filed on the grounds of abandonment. He claimed she had walked out on him, leaving the apartment and the marriage without warning. His attorney outlined the settlement. He kept the apartment, the furniture, their joint savings account, and somehow, even half of her retirement. The justification? She had chosen her sister over her husband. Vanessa was furious. "You can fight this. You need to fight this." But Samantha shook her head. "I don't want to waste another second cleaning up his mess." She met briefly with a lawyer Vanessa insisted she speak to. The attorney was blunt. "You're entitled to a lot more. If you contest this, we can make it right." But Samantha wasn't interested in legal battles, not with a man who had made her dignity collateral damage. "I'll get back what's mine," she said. But not through him. Not anymore. That night, in her tiny motel room, Samantha pulled out an old box from one of the garbage bags Kyle had stuffed her belongings into. Inside, wrapped in a hoodie, was her external hard drive, one he hadn't noticed or cared enough to sell. She plugged it into her laptop and waited, heart pounding. The folder labeled Portfolio opened. Years of her digital art, lesson plans, animated pieces, illustrations she'd created late at night when the world was quiet. It was all there, untouched, unclaimed, still hers. By morning, she had filled out her application to the university's master's program in arts administration, something she had once dreamed of pursuing but shelved in favor of stability. She submitted her portfolio, rewrote her personal statement, and hit send. The acceptance email came 3 weeks later, offering her a partial scholarship. The first time in weeks, Samantha smiled. She moved into a small studio apartment walking distance from the school. It was barely furnished, just a mattress, a folding chair, and a second-hand table. But it was hers. She took a part-time job working nights at the university library. During the day, she attended classes, blending in with younger students, her heart pounding every time she had to introduce herself. But every lecture, every project, felt like stepping into a future that was finally her own. It was terrifying, and it was exactly what she needed. Samantha's days began at sunrise and ended long after midnight. She would wake up in her small studio apartment, grab instant coffee, head to the university for classes, then spend her evenings shelving books and checking IDs at the library circulation desk. After closing, she'd walk home under Reno's dim streetlights and sit at her laptop, eyes bleary, designing what she now called Canvas, a digital art therapy program that could help others process grief and loss, the same way art had helped her survive. She began sketching out modules, abstract drawing exercises, digital collage prompts, gentle animations guiding users through visual journaling. Canvas wasn't therapy in the clinical sense, but a bridge, a way to help people start healing when words weren't enough. She designed every page with care, pulling from her years of teaching art and her own emotional landscape. Slowly, the concept shifted. One evening after class, Professor Winters, a well-rested faculty member in arts administration, pulled her aside. "Your project proposal for Canvas was the strongest I've seen in years," she said. "You should apply for the Carson Foundation Fellowship. They fund social impact arts initiatives." Samantha had heard of the fellowship in Pinnacle and Acquisition. "There's a half an apple carnation." Her proposal outlined Canvas as a scalable platform for hospitals, schools, and individuals navigating personal crises. 2 weeks later, an email arrived. She had won. The $15,000 0 award wasn't a fortune, but it felt like one. With it, she hired a graduate student from the computer science department to help her build a basic version of the program. They worked from her apartment, sitting side by side at her small kitchen table, troubleshooting bugs and testing interface designs. Every spare moment was dedicated to Canvas. The platform's first prototype launched quietly 6 months later, with 50 beta users recruited through local hospitals and counseling centers. Among them were cancer patients, recently divorced individuals, and people grieving loved ones. Samantha sent out feedback forms, not expecting much, but what she got changed everything. One woman wrote, "I lost my husband to cancer 6 months ago. I haven't been able to speak about it, but I've drawn through it. Canvas gave me back a piece of myself." Another shared, "I look forward to my Canvas time every evening. It's the only part of my day that feels like it belongs to me." Samantha read every word, every sentence, with tears in her eyes. Her pain was becoming someone else's path to peace. Then came Kyle's final legal move. The official divorce decree arrived in a manila envelope, its language cold and clinical. Everything was documented, who kept what, who owed nothing. Kyle walked away with nearly everything of monetary value. The apartment, the retirement accounts, even the furniture. Her lawyer was livid. He said, "We can take him to court, demand your share." Samantha looked at the paperwork for a long moment before shaking her head. "He didn't take the best part of me," she said. "That's not something you can sign away." Instead of returning to court, she poured herself into Canvas. Every line of code, every pixel, every user journey. She saw it as an act of reclamation. Canvas wasn't just software. It was survival turned into strategy. Grief transformed into growth. And for the first time since her life had collapsed, Samantha didn't feel like she was climbing out of something. She felt like she was building something entirely new. 2 years after Samantha launched Canvas, an email landed in her inbox from a producer at National Morning, one of the most watched talk shows in the country. A staff member at the show had been using Canvas while supporting her mother through chemotherapy. The producer wrote, "Your program helped her find calm in chaos. We'd love to feature you in our Innovations in Mental Health segment." Samantha stared at the message, hardly believing it was real. She read it 3 times before picking up the phone and calling Vanessa. Her sister screamed loud enough to startle the neighbors. "This is it," Vanessa said. "This is what everything's been leading to." Samantha flew to New York with a single suitcase and a portfolio in hand. The show arranged a car service to pick her up from the airport. She stayed in a modest hotel near the studio, unable to sleep the night before the interview. Her mind ran through every detail. What if she froze? What if no one cared? But when the cameras rolled and the host, Jessica Chen, smiled across at her, all the nerves melted away. "Samantha," Jessica began, "Canvas was born from your personal experience. Tell us, how did this journey begin?" Samantha took a breath. 2 years ago, I came home from the hospital where I'd been caring for my sister. I found the locks on my apartment changed. My husband ended our marriage by text, sold my car, pawned my jewelry, and left me with nothing but a few trash bags and a storage unit. Canvas, what came after. Jessica leaned forward. "And what is Canvas to you now?" "It's not just a therapy program," Samantha said. "It's how I took my life back." The interview aired the next morning. Within minutes, the Canvas website crashed from the traffic. Her inbox flooded with messages, healthcare providers asking for partnerships, therapists requesting bulk access, investor in expanding the platform. Samantha spent the next 72 hours answering emails, scheduling calls, and working with her developer to stabilize the site. And then, one message stood out. The subject line read, "I saw you on TV." It was from Kyle. Samantha hesitated. She almost deleted it. But her curiosity got the better of her. The message was short. "I'm turning myself in tomorrow. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Seeing you succeed is the one bright spot in all this. You deserve everything that's coming. Goodbye, Samantha." She closed the message and didn't reply. That could have been the end. But it wasn't. 6 months later, Canvas received a national award for innovation in digital mental health. The ceremony was held in New York, in a glittering ballroom full of executives, medical professionals, and tech innovators. Samantha stood in the crowd wearing a tailored dress and modest heels, her heart pounding as her name was called. She stepped onto the stage and accepted the award. "Canvas was born out of necessity," she told the audience. "When my life collapsed, I needed to find a way to put the pieces back together. What I created became a roadmap for others to do the same." The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, she mingled with guests alongside her new partner, James, who had supported her throughout the past 8 months. As she was laughing at something he said, an event coordinator approached. "Miss Delaney, someone outside would like to speak with you. He says it's important." Samantha already knew who it was. She found Kyle waiting in the lobby, dressed in a worn suit, eyes sunken, shoulders slouched. He stood when he saw her, but the man she'd once known was barely recognizable. "Congratulations," he said. "I read about your award. I hope it's okay that I came." She looked at him carefully. "How did you get in?" "I told them I was with Oak Ridge Health. They're one of your partners, right?" A shadow of his old smile flickered. "I've been following your success." She felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just distance. "I served 14 months, he said quietly. "Out early for good behavior. I'm doing construction now, honest work. I think about what I threw away every day. He paused. Not just our marriage, but the person you were becoming. I could have been part of this. Rona, she said gently. You couldn't have. This happened because you left. He blinked. The realization hit him like a gust of wind. She turned to go. You're happy? He asked. Samantha looked back toward the ballroom, where her future waited. James, her, award, her company. She said, I am. Then she walked away, leaving Kyle behind, not out of vengeance, but out of peace. Her revenge wasn't destroying him. It was building something he could never touch. 2 years after that award ceremony in New York, Samantha Delaney's world looked nothing like the dim hallway where it all began. Canvas had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. With over 1.5 million users worldwide and institutional partnerships in hospitals, schools, and veteran centers, her platform was changing how people processed grief, trauma, and transition. What started as her private battle had become a public movement of healing, and she no longer introduced herself as a teacher. She was now CEO of Canvas, a digital innovator, a thought leader in mental health technology. Her office in downtown Reno overlooked the very streets she used to walk in heartbreak, but now they felt like symbols of strength. She had transformed the setting of her devastation into the headquarters of her reinvention. The same city, yes, but a completely different woman now lived there. Samantha's days were busy, but fulfilling. She ran strategy meetings, worked with developers to update Canvas features, and mentored younger women entering the tech and nonprofit spaces. Once a week, she hosted community workshops on creative recovery, open to anyone needing a safe place to start over. She also began speaking at tech and wellness conferences, sharing her story not for sympathy but for inspiration. Her voice, once quiet and careful, now carried confidence, purpose, and authority. At her side was James, a therapist she met during one of her early outreach partnerships. Their relationship was built slowly, patiently, with mutual respect. James never tried to fix her, he simply supported her. He believed in her work, encouraged her independence, and never asked her to minimize her past. Their love was calm, grown up, and rooted in equality. He didn't overfelt the need to shrink herself. For Samantha, that alone was revolutionary. She now lived in a bright, minimalist home she'd purchased with her own savings. The car she drove was one she bought outright, no cosigner, no compromise. Her retirement fund, once split in half by a man who claimed she'd abandoned him, had been rebuilt through hard work and smart planning. She was completely debt-free, and completely at peace with where her life had landed. When Samantha thought of Kyle now, which happened less and less often, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with a kind of emotional neutrality. He had become a lesson, a chapter closed. His betrayal was what cracked her world open, but it also gave her the space to write a new one. She had outgrown both. Canvas had recently launched a new feature specifically designed for people navigating divorce and relationship trauma. It was one of the most used modules on the platform. Samantha oversaw every detail of its development, not because she was reliving her pain, but because she understood it intimately, and she wanted others to have a roadmap forward. Looking at the life she had now, her work, her team, her community, and the quiet joy of waking up without fear, Samantha realized something simple but profound. She didn't just rebuild. She became someone stronger, bolder, and more whole than she'd ever been before. The final pieces of her old life were long gone, and not once had she missed them. On the second anniversary of the day Kyle changed the locks, Samantha sat alone in her downtown Reno office. It was quiet. Outside, the streetlights flickered on as evening settled in. She opened her journal, the same one she had once written in with trembling hands and swollen eyes, unsure of what would come next. She flipped back through pages filled with grief, confusion, and raw questions. She paused on an entry from that first week. I don't know who I am without him. Then she turned to the latest page and began to write. I know exactly who I am. and he never knew me at all. In a drawer, she kept a manila folder labeled "Proof I Survived." Inside was the pawn shop receipt for her wedding ring, a copy of the forged title transfer for her car, and a court notice showing Kyle's conviction for fraud. She didn't keep them out of anger. Reminders that she didn't disappear when someone tried to erase her. She adapted. She evolved. She thrived. That evening, Samantha spoke at a survivors support group meeting hosted at a local women's center. She stood before a circle of women, many just beginning their journey through heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. She spoke, not as a victim, but as someone who had rebuilt from the ground up. "The worst thing someone ever did to me," she said, "became the best thing I ever did for myself. I didn't just lose a husband. I lost everything I thought made me safe. But in that loss, I found freedom. I found possibility. I found me." There were tears in the room, but also nods, and even a few small smiles. She saw in their eyes what she had once felt, hopelessness wrapped in longing. She had no miracle cure to offer them. What she gave instead was proof that it was possible to start again and to do it stronger. Later that night, she returned to her office. It was past 9. The city was quiet, the air crisp. She lit a small white candle and placed it on the corner of her desk. It wasn't for mourning. It was for Kyle. It was for her, a personal ritual to mark the moment she'd been remade, not broken, but reshaped. Fire had forged something unbreakable in her. The woman who once sobbed on motel pillows was gone. In her place stood someone who no longer flinched at memory, someone whose power no longer came from anger, but from clarity. Samantha Delaney didn't live in the shadow of a text message anymore. She didn't need revenge, validation, or apologies. She lived in the spotlight of her own voice. A voice that spoke for healing, for reinvention, for women who were ready to rise. And on this quiet night, with the candle burning low and the journal closed, she smiled. She had become her own closure. He changed the locks. I opened new doors. He sold my past. I built my future. My name is Samantha Delaney. I was 47 years old, broke, humiliated, and abandoned in a motel hallway with nothing but a bag of clothes and a broken heart. But I didn't stay there. I chose to rebuild. Kyle thought he ended my story with a text message. What he actually did was hand me the pen. I took my pain and turned it into purpose. I created something that helps others process grief, loss, and trauma. Not by erasing it, but by transforming it. Canvas wasn't just my business. It became my rebirth. If you've ever felt discarded, erased, or betrayed, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are in transition. Some people leave, so you can finally arrive. You deserve more than survival. You deserve reinvention. You deserve a life that reflects your worth. And if no one else believes in you yet, believe in this. You can start over. You can rise. And you are not alone. This is just one story out of many, and if it inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more stories where betrayal meets brilliance, and women rewrite their fate. Because sometimes, rock bottom isn't the end. It's the solid ground you needed to rise. And that's what we celebrate here. One story at a time. One comeback at a time. This is Veiled Fury.